forward, let's take a look at this change of venue. I'm not going to read every word, but the issues. We're going to read through the issues that Bryan Kohberger's defense team thinks that they're going to have by having the trial in Latah. Issue 1, Bryan Kohberger cannot receive a fair trial in Latah County as protected by his rights by both the United States and Idaho constitutions because of the pervasive, inflammatory, often inaccurate, and highly prejudicial publicity and the small size of the jury veneer. So that means there's slim pickings. Slim pickings in Latah County. And we all knew that, right? We knew that there was slim pickings there because it's so rural and small. I mean, hell, half the people, or more than half the people, probably live in Moscow. We're also going to talk, hang on, I'm going to pull this up and get it ready because I don't want to forget. We're going to talk a little bit about Oregon and a situation that happened in Ohio, which is actually where you're from there. We'll get into that after this. Okay, so the second issue is a change of venue is necessary under Idaho Criminal Rule 21 and Idaho Code 19-1801. So the abbreviated factual background is as follows. Media coverage of this case that later became State versus Bryan Kohberger began in the early afternoon of November 13th, 2022, when the news broke of 4 homicides in Latah County, Idaho. Extensive media coverage ensued for 6 weeks during the police investigation prior to the arrest of Mr. Kohberger. Daily updates were available from Moscow Police Department. Often participating in the updates or press releases was the Latah County prosecutor and chief of police James Fry. These broadcasts were played on television news stations as well as print and digital media. Social media covered the investigation, with MPD updating its Facebook and providing press releases regularly. Then they have the exhibit of the press releases. MPD's investigation included law enforcement partners from Idaho State Police and FBI. Media coverage, particularly in the market covering Latah County, was replete with story after story in local newspapers and news stations. Media focus did not stop with locally targeted news stations or newspapers. It extended into magazines, books, crime TV shows, and the current medium of information and opinion sharing, the internet. Immediately and consistently, the internet was abuzz with podcasts, tweets, Facebook groups, Reddit, YouTube, and TikTok postings, which is true in every high-profile case. Once the police arrested Mr. Kohberger, the public was ready to, and has, proceeded to vilify him without regard to the constitutional guarantee of the presumption of innocence and a right to an impartial jury and fair trial. The media focus on Mr. Kohberger has been relentless and highly inflammatory. Now, do you believe it? Do you believe those statements? Do you believe those statements? Bryan Kohberger could not receive a fair trial. The great value of the trial. Wait, hold on. I'm not going to read that. That's from case file. Okay, the United States Constitution guarantee an accused with a fair trial and an impartial jury. The constitutional mandate of a fair trial by an impartial jury requires a change of venue where an impartial jury cannot be impaneled in the district where the indictment is returned. Then we go down here. Bryan Christopher Kohberger, once arrested, became a recognized name. The investigation into the deaths of the 4 college students had captured the attention of the community, the state, the country, and even beyond the United States long before the arrest of Mr. Kohberger. Since his arrest, interest in the charges, who he is, and his background continue rather than fade over time. The continuous nature of media coverage, often inaccurate and misleading, the impact of the media coverage, and the small size of the community make the case against Mr. Kohberger extreme. Media saturation in Latah County has been continuously heavy since the deaths were reported. Public interest in this case does not wane. Stories about the case of Mr. Kohberger come in the form of published books, television crime shows, internet platforms, social media, news stations, and newspapers. The most coverage from these sources has occurred in Latah County. Coverage runs the gamut of reporting on items contained in court filings to reporting what, quote, unnamed sources, that's Howard Bloom, have said, as well as reporting based on other media stories. These stories are often rife with misinformation and speculation. The amount of media stories, the inaccurate and speculative nature of the stories, and the impact on potential jurors show that State versus Kohberger is an extreme case. The impact of this vast media coverage on a potential Latah County juror demonstrates the necessity of venue change. Media from locations outside of Latah County is easily accessible to a potential juror. However, Latah County residents have received the most media saturation within the state. So then it goes on to say, let's see, let's go down here. They're citing a bunch of case law. This is like 300 pages. So here's the exhibitees. Damn. Hold on. Lots of press releases in here. Okay, so here's the survey. This is what I wanted to find out. Okay, so here is the survey results. The survey data, so if you guys don't know what the survey is, the defense employed a company to call and poll Latah County. So here it is. A telephone survey was conducted in Latah County. Comparison surveys were conducted in Ada, Canyon, and Bannock counties. Research Strategies, Inc. was hired to field the telephone survey. So they called these people, and the survey data indicate that the media coverage has negatively impacted the Latah County jury pool. For example, 98% of the Latah County survey respondents have read, seen, or heard about this case. And 86% recognized at least 4 of the 9 media items tested in the survey. 81% of those familiar with the case have read, seen, or heard that police found a knife sheath on the bed next to one of the victims. Do you think any of this matters? So what if they know the police found a knife sheath? And 67% heard that DNA found on the sheath matched Bryan Kohberger. In addition, 88% of Latah County survey respondents have talked about this case or heard others talking about it. The media coverage has also shifted the burden of proof to the defendant. Many community members exposed to the prejudicial media coverage hold a, quote, presumption of guilt, end quote, in this case. 67% of survey respondents familiar with the case believe that Bryan Kohberger is guilty of murder. 67%. And 51% reported that he would have a difficult time convincing them otherwise. So half of the people that were surveyed said they felt he was guilty and you'd have a hard time convincing me otherwise. So what do you guys think of that? I say put it in Ada County and forget about it. I mean, they did it with Chad Daybell. I think they're going to do it with him. I just have a feeling. But does that mean... Yeah. Hold on. That's going to be our next thing. Does that mean that Judge would have to go to Ada? Or would he get the judge in Ada? Yeah, the survey footage, the survey result is in here. Oh, here's more. Here's more stats. In addition, approximately 68% said that they followed the case somewhat or very closely, with 29 falling into the latter category. 67% of prospective jurors who were familiar with the case believe Bryan Kohberger is guilty of murder. 67%, with 25% falling into the definitely guilty category. The presumption of guilt increased to 81% for those who recognize 7 or more media items tested in the survey. 81%. Furthermore, 51% of those who have been exposed to media coverage reported that Kohberger would have a difficult time convincing them he is not guilty, which increased to 66% for those who recognized 7 or more media items. Just 19% reported that the defendant would not have a difficult time convincing them of his innocence. Ooh, those are not good stats. 52% believe that the jury should sentence him to death if he's convicted, compared to 24% who favor the life without possibility of parole. 51% of those who did not support a life sentence indicated that the defendant would have a difficult time convincing them that he should not be executed. Only 19% disagreed with that statement. Wow. So there's tons of stats in here. Look. Bryan Kohberger. Okay, look at Bryan Kohberger stalked one of the victims. Believe the defendant is guilty, 81%. Defendant would have a difficult time convincing, 62%. Bryan Kohberger said he was out driving alone on the night of the murders. 79% said the percent guilty, 62% difficult time convincing not guilty. Bryan Kohberger had followed one of the victims on social media, 79% and 62%. DNA found on the sheath was matched to Bryan Kohberger. 75% think he's guilty, 56% difficult time convince me you're not. Police found a knife sheath on the bed next to one of the victims. 72% guilty, 55% gotta convince me. Bryan Kohberger owned the same type of car recorded on video, driving in the neighborhood where the killings occurred. 72% again, guilty. 55%, he'd have a difficult time convincing me he's not. Cell phone tower data show that Bryan Kohberger made several trips near the victim's home in the months before the killings. 72%, guilty. 55%, you'd have a hard time convincing me. So 88% of the Latah County survey respondents who recognize the case have talked about the murders or heard others talking about them. 45% have read, seen, or heard that Bryan Kohberger stalked one of the victims. And 45% were aware he allegedly followed one of them on social media. So it says here, Latah County survey respondents reported a litany of rumors and conjecture that have been spread in the coverage, informal discussions, and social media. So that would be our kind of discussions. Okay? Informal discussions. This is us right here, right now. These are your informal fucking discussions. You ready? He may come from a family of crime and previous cases have been uncovered. I've heard that Kohberger has been linked to other murders in Washington and Pennsylvania. I've heard they are railroading Kohberger to put him away, and the evidence was planted and he was being framed. One other one that I heard was he was working with one or the other of the roommates. Some speculation that Kohberger committed a murder in Oregon. Possible. That's the couple, remember, that was attacked. The house was a party house. And a couple of people who died weren't supposed to be there. The boyfriend and girlfriend. Also, Kohberger had commented about committing the perfect murder in a paper. That maybe one of the victims had rejected him sexually because of this. Or caused this. And with his criminal justice interest, he wanted to try to commit the perfect murder. The girls were party girls. Bryan was studying criminology. See how much he could get away with. You were going to kill someone. How would you get away with it? I just heard it was part of his research to commit these murders in a small town because he thought he could get away with it. These are all statements of the people polled. That he planned it out and he would keep doing it if he wasn't caught. He was a law student at WSU and he looked on the internet for how to do certain things. He was interviewing people for his thesis. Someone said he might have been snubbed by the girls at parties. Students that were killed were big partiers and had been to parties with them. And he had been to parties with them. And that Kohberger bragged about committing a perfect murder and was taking criminal justice classes. People who they thought was involved, also that the other roommates were involved, but that hasn't been proven. It's just a rumor. Rumors about other suspects. He frequented Mad Greek, stalking. That there could have been another person. I heard that Kohberger had an obsession. Multiple people involved may have been connected with ritual killings of an animal. Speculation that the roommates are involved. Surprised the police did not do more investigations. I think frat boys may have been involved. News on the street. It was a really gruesome murder and vicious. Also heard by people I know in jail. They have told me they have seen interaction with police and Kohberger while in jail, and says the police are friendly to butter up Kohberger to try to get him to talk. Police here are doing an excellent job hearing on the case. We were told he sliced and diced them and hung them from the fan. Oh my God. I can't even believe that's in these papers. Wow. This shit came from 4chan. Oh my God. Wow. I'm sorry, I'm not looking at chat because I'm reading, but y'all, what the heck? All this shit online is coming into this case, even 4chan. So you pro Kohbergers out there, look at what you're doing. Look at what you're doing. Don't know why he did it. There were some rumors he stalked the girls, but can't say that's true. The rumor that he was an ex of one of the female victims, and I heard he had Tourette's. He fit the description and was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He tried to leave the country. I heard that it was 2 people, and they found his DNA at the scene. See, this is all coming from casual conversations online. I heard that the defense isn't sure who it is, or maybe the roommates are involved, or there may be more than one person. He had someone else in the car with him. He killed people, and there was someone else helping him. His roommate said Kohberger was acting strange around the time of the murders. He is guilty. He did it, and the evidence was found at the crime scene. He knew one of the people in there. He tried to connect with one woman. He was aware of where the girls were all the time. Been in and around the house a couple times. Rumors that there was a second person responsible, and rumors of following the girls online and lots of parties at the house because it is a university town. He was obsessed with one of the girls at the house. I heard that Bryan tried to hit on one of the girls at the restaurant. Bryan Kohberger said, am I the only one getting arrested when the cop picked him up? He was stalking one of the victims. He was delusional about being in a relationship with one of the girls. This is crazy. This is summing up all of these fucked up YouTube conversations in like a court document. We're pretty sure he did it. Pretty sure he was stalking them, checking on the places they went. One of the girls had spurred his romantic advances. He went into the house and he killed 3 girls and 1 gentleman. He was dating one of the girls and she stopped seeing him. He backed off and killed them all. Him sleeping or being obsessed with one of the girls and him stalking them. What? His relationship with the victims, attracted to one. I've heard something along the lines that he had a personal grudge against them, but don't know if it's true. I heard he was stalking 2 of the victims. I also heard he went back in the house after the murders were committed. I also heard that the roommates were in on it. He was a teacher assistant at WSU, and he had issues with women there. One of the restaurants where he ate, it was where one of the girls worked at. This goes on. I don't even know if I can read all these. Oh my God, look at this. Oh, I can't read all those. Holy shit. Wow, this is insane. I've read and seen a ridiculous amount of false information on TV and online. I've heard numerous things too intense for me to repeat. Maybe he didn't want one of the girls leaving town. The rumor is going to write a book about it, and the reason is to write a book. He got love letters from women in prison. That's a rumor. What if the defense attorney wants to make sure he doesn't get executed? That's a rumor. There are tons of rumors in this town, knee deep in rumors. The worst rumor was that the murders were engineered by a woman. A psychic in Texas accused her of murder. The woman's being sued, and there's court facts about it. The rumor is the history professor did this at UI. I've heard rumors that the roommates might be or could be involved. I've heard that the girl he really liked, that he had stabbed her the most and the worst. Heard rumors about drug deals. Heard that it was a possible drug case. I heard there was a drug deal gone bad. There you go. Lana Oriani, watchers. Idiot. I've heard all kinds of things, from drug deals gone bad or to his being so smart that he thought he could get away with murder. One that really bothered me was that the roommates were not killed. Dylan and Bethany survived. They were talking during the murder, and two surviving roommates were involved somehow. There were drugs. It was disturbing. There's nothing in the information released that alludes to them having any involvement in the crimes. That the police department was corrupt in the prosecutor's office. Some conspiracy about cover-up. There have been rumors about the university and cops being involved. I had met 2 of the victims, and they were scared of him. Speculation is he drove over there and left his phone, murdered the people, drove away, left and went back that morning, remembering he forgot the sheath. That he might have thrown the knife in a river. That there is so much evidence against him. There's speculation some people heard him when he started attacking them, and that one of them fought back. Some people think that he made it look like he drove to Clarkston, Washington, so it wouldn't look like he was in Moscow. And there was a coffee shop that saw his car in Clarkston. Oh my God. This is a mess. It's ripped our community apart. I fear that nobody is safe. I checked my doors. I bought my daughter and nieces that live in Moscow bear spray. Oh, man. Terrified us. We never locked our doors. Now we have locks on our doors and security systems. The media was very negative. It was painful for the witness. What irks our nerves is his thesis on how to get away with murder. I mean, it goes on and on. I mean, there's a lot in these. Okay, here's another thing. What have you seen, read, or heard about these events? I mean, this is extensive. Do you guys think that the judge is going to move the trial? 86% of Latah County survey respondents heard that the defendant owned the same type of car. 79% knew that cell phone data showed that he made several trips near the victim's home months before the killings. Crazy, huh? And this is all the questions they asked. I'm not going to go through all the survey, but they asked, they said you can respond with don't know, no opinion. But they did strongly agree, somewhat disagree for all of these. And there's a ton of them. Volume of media coverage, Latah County versus the rest of Idaho, and population of Latah County versus the rest of Idaho here. 36%. And look at 2.75% population compared to the rest of Idaho. Why don't you think it'll be televised like Daybell? I think it will. These are from this is from the court documents. This is a filing for change of venue. And this is their evidence and their outcomes of the survey. That's what this is. So they're trying to prove that he can't get a fair trial in Latah. This is Ada County. And then the population of Ada, see? We've got 2.75% here. We've got 26% here in Ada. Then you've got all the counties compared. Ada, Bannock, Canyon, and Latah. The volume of media coverage in those counties. So with the population of Latah being so small, they had more media coverage than any other county is what they're saying, basically. And then they've got all their data. And this is the guy that did it. That's his resume. They've got all this attached. His report, his final report, all of that. And that's pretty much it. Stats on how valid the polls are, et cetera, footnotes, sources, everything else. So my question I leave you with on this, which is what our poll says, is do you think that Bryan Kohberger can get a fair trial in Latah County? Hey, crime solver. It takes into account everything. Yeah, they even just went over casual conversations like we have here on YouTube and the things that have been speculated. You know, the drug things, everything we've heard, all the speculation that the roommates were involved, et cetera, et cetera. So 54% of you think that he can get a fair trial in Latah. Now we're going to do a poll. Do you guys think it should be moved? Because he can always come back later and say it wasn't fair if these stats are, you know, legit. So there you go. Answer that one. And again, I just want to say my thoughts go out to the Goncalves family. We haven't forgotten you guys. Absolutely not. I know a lot of you guys follow them on Facebook and, you know, continue showing them your support. Let them know that no one has forgotten what's going on here, even though it's been delayed. Legendary CEO